While our government's official position is not to speculate on this subject, we can choose to let our minds explore other possibilities, to use our imaginations. For if we consider that astroscientists agree on one point, that the possibility of life elsewhere is not only quite probable, some feel it is there without a doubt. Let us suppose then that these objects are real space vehicles, extraterrestrial in origin, and not an illusion of the mind.
You are now somewhere in the skies.
Hi Ryan, I'm Nicole. I'm a musician and writer who divides my time between my home in Melbourne, Australia, and Hexham, Northumberland, in the UK, where my Brit partner Bill lives. I started to realise UFOs were real in mid-2023 when I started paying attention to the UAP Disclosure Act, congressional debates and whistleblower testimony, which then led me into researching the phenomenon from all different perspectives. Up to that point in time, I just assumed UFOs and aliens were cool pop subculture memes. They were a big part of 1990s underground rave culture, which is where I started performing with my first band, an all-girl indie dance crossover outfit. We called ourselves Area 51. But although I now know, after 2 years of digging further and further into this fascinating phenomenon, that UFOs are absolutely real in all senses of the word, I'd never actually seen any myself. Until a couple of days ago. Last Friday, 25th of July 2025, Bill and I were at the lovely Deershed Festival in Baldersley Park, near Thirsk in northern Yorkshire. It was after 10 p.m, when the sun had set and the sky was getting dark. Bands were still playing and most people were down at the main festival site partying on, but Bill and I walked back to the campground and were enjoying the quiet before the crowd returned, having our last tipple before hitting the sack. Suddenly I noticed a bright object that I initially thought was a large star appear high up in the sky in the distance to the north of the festival site. Bill is an astronomy buff, so I asked him, "Look at that, what star is that?" And he immediately said, "That's not a star." We watched it for a while. It was stationary for maybe 30 seconds, then it did a kind of dart to the right, then moved in the opposite direction at a very fast rate, where after a few seconds it seemed to disappear into some clouds in the distance. Bill is open-minded and on board with the whole UAP disclosure thing. However, as a former pilot and engineer with a PhD in cognitive neuroscience, where he specialised in visual processing for cockpit design, he is always sceptical about UFO sightings, particularly by lay people. He knows all the visual tricks that atmosphere can play, and he also understands how the various types of aircraft, helicopters, drones, satellites, etc., move, and he can recognise them. That makes him, to use the jargon, a trained observer witness for identifying things in the skies. The object was well above the height of a nearby oak tree, and Bill estimated its initial position at 5,000 to 10,000 feet. He noticed the object made no noise. It was brighter and slightly larger than a star. It maneuvered like no known manufactured or natural aerial object. It remained completely still for up to a minute, then darting back and forth, then zipping very fast in a controlled direction of movement, diagonally down, then turning away into the distance. All these observations led him, not me, to exclaim, "I think we just saw a UFO." That was exciting enough, but then a few minutes later, the object suddenly reappeared in exactly the same position in the sky where I first spotted it. It remained stationary again for about 30 seconds, then darted around in a slightly different way than the first time, then sped off into the distance with the same trajectory as before, seemingly disappearing into some clouds again. At this, Bill was alarmed. He said, "That's not normal. That's a UFO. This is starting to freak me out." But I was super happy, as this is my first sighting, and the object was moving exactly the way I'd read about it in other witness accounts. I thought about trying to take some footage, but the show was over so quickly, and I knew on my phone camera all I'd get at best would be some unimpressive blurry light whizzing around in the distance, and I didn't want to take my eyes off the object for a second while fumbling for my phone. I kept staring at the now completely dark sky, hoping the object would return again. Then, after a few more minutes, I noticed a smaller bright green light in the same area of the sky that the first white light object appeared in. Then it moved back and forth for a bit, then diagonally down in the direction of the first object, then seemed to change direction and start moving towards us. As it got larger, I noticed it was now 3 twinkling green lights in a row, like part of a craft of some kind. So I asked Bill, could that be a drone? Something to do with the festival? And he said, no, it is too high, and drones don't move like that. And then the lights took off in the same direction as the other object, disappearing into the clouds. Bill was amazed but disconcerted by the sightings and wanted to go to bed. But I waited up for about half an hour, hoping for more action. But the show was over, so I finally hit the sack too. We left the festival early the next morning, and while driving home I wondered if there was an RAF base nearby, as I knew the regularity with which UAPs are spotted around military air bases, particularly those with nuclear weapons. So I got my phone out and looked at the map, and sure enough, 3 miles away from the festival site, right in the direction of where we saw the object, there is a base called the Allenbrook Barracks. Allenbrook is an ordnance field park where military weapons are stored and sometimes tested. No nukes there though, apparently. But it turns out it's located on the site of the former RAF Topcliffe Air Base, which I didn't know is apparently a bit legendary in British ufology. Google it yourself, but there is a well-documented series of UFO sightings over Topcliffe RAF in September 1952, seen by pilots and ground observers during a NATO exercise, including one incident involving a silver disc-shaped object following a Gloucester meteor jet returning to the base. This is a quote. The object was described as rotating while hovering, then accelerating away at high speed. On Sunday afternoon, we drove back to the festival to catch a band we really liked on that evening, and after they finished at 9:30, Bill wanted to go back to the spot at the campground where we had our sighting so he could confirm distances, direction, etc. We then walked back across the festival to the car park field, and just as we got near Bill's Land Rover, I started thinking, I must tell Bill that UFO sightings aren't just for Christmas, they're for life, meaning, having seen one UFO, we were now likely to see more. When suddenly a bright light appeared over the trees at the bottom of the field and started moving towards us. When it was right above us, it turned and flew off towards the campsite. Bill was convinced it was just a drone, flying at legal drone height of 300 to 400 feet, but it made no noise, and just before it disappeared into some clouds in the distance, I saw it was now 3 twinkling green lights, and the moment it vanished, high above it, in front of the clouds, a bright white light appeared for a few seconds, then vanished. So, the impact of those sightings on me and Bill? In 2 weeks' time, the Cosmic Frequency Festival takes place here in Hexham from the 8th to the 10th of August. Bill and I and Mike from local space funk band, the SKX Funkanauts, have created this new festival to bring together astronomers, SETI researchers, sci-fi enthusiasts, musicians, and, very importantly, experiencers, to explore the question, are we alone in the universe? You're speaking at that, Ryan, and I'm so honoured you agreed to be part of this small-town cosmic experiment. I feel the sighting was a personal validation that all the hard work and money I and the others are putting into cosmic frequencies is going to be worth it. It feels like this is the right thing I should be doing at this moment in time. Bill has gone from being the skeptical but open-minded scientist to being convinced about the reality of unidentified flying objects through his personal experience of not being able to explain what he saw somewhere in the skies.
Hi, my name is Bill Schaefer, and this is a true story. This is when I saw a black triangle. Now, I've always been interested in UFOs and space aliens and space movies and science fiction. In the 60s or 70s, I read Frank Edwards' book, UFOs, Serious Business. But I never really anticipated that I would see one, and I never was certain that they were real. Although statistically, probabilistically, it's highly likely there's life in other places in the universe. There's 200 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy. And there are 200 billion galaxies in the universe. Therefore, to assume that Earth is the only place that has life is highly unlikely. But that's a story for another video. This was in 2007. And on August 28th, I believe, there was a lunar eclipse. At this time, I was working at Asylum in Santa Monica. We were working on the movie National Treasure 2, and I worked second shift as a rotoscope artist. I wanted to do paint, but they had all the beginning workers doing paint, and so I was a rotoscope artist because I was good at it. A few other people were there. Merlin was a friend of mine, a co-worker, who I've since kind of lost touch with, but we had a lot in common and would take breaks together. Well, our shift ended around 3 o'clock, and this lunar eclipse started around 2:30 in the morning. And so I worked through lunch, and I wanted to take off early to videotape the lunar eclipse. The building we worked in was on Wilshire and 6th Street in Santa Monica, and the asylum was on the 2nd and 3rd floor. There was a rooftop patio on the top of the 2nd floor on the 3rd floor, but there was also a 4th and 5th floor in the building and a higher roof. So we took off work early and we went out to the patio on the 3rd floor. And I brought my video camera and was setting it up shooting the moon. I've always been fascinated with the lunar eclipse and have shot it before on a number of occasions. I have a video of the lunar eclipse on this YouTube channel. So it was going along, Merlin came out, and the whole time Merlin was joking about, oh, I see a UFO, or oh, I see a alien, or oh, there's a spaceship on the moon, and all that kind of stuff, and he's joking around. But it was a beautiful evening. As I remember it, it was absolutely clear. There was not a cloud in the sky. And it was late at night. It was around 2 o'clock, 2:30, so there was no air traffic at all. And it was a calm, still night with no wind, and it was warm and beautiful. And the moon started changing colors. And it's, as the shadow of the earth came over the moon, it started changing to a rust-colored orange. And we were watching it and talking, and we were talking about third shift and this and that. Merlin's joking around, and we're having just a kind of a casual fun time watching the moon change because we were used to this shift and we were already up. Well, at one point, after I'm talking about third shift, I'd see something over the corner of my eye. And I look back. I think, it's just an airplane. And then I realize, I look back, and this is no airplane. This is something I've never seen before. And it was huge. Coming over the higher roof and perfectly still was a huge black ship. It was absolutely the exact color of the night sky, and it was a triangle with a square on the back of it. And at the points of the triangle were these bright white light right at the point, almost like light was escaping somehow, and it was like pure white light. But the rest of the ship was absolutely dark, exactly the same color as the night sky. You could hardly see it. It was exactly the same color as the sky. And it just sat up there like this. And I looked back, and the funny thing is that I totally forgot I had a video camera. I forgot everything because this ship was so unusual. It was no airplane, and it was just sitting there motionless. It was almost as if it snuck over the top of the building and was watching us. But it was just sitting up there, moving ever so slowly, motionless almost, and silent, making not a noise at all. And I found myself staring at the ship, trying to make sense of it and telling myself, Bill, you have to remember this. Bill, you have to remember this. And so I tried to etch and burn the image of the ship in my mind. And I totally forgot I had a video camera. I could have just videotaped it, but I was dumbfounded. And it was like in a dream time or something. There was some kind of dreamy quality about the whole experience. And that's it. So I was looking at it for a long time, and I was noticing the details of it, that it was exactly like the night sky, and you could just barely see the edge of it. And to my mind, it seemed like a bad composite. I do special effects compositing, and I could see the mad edge, like on the edge of the ship. So I motioned to Merlin, check this out. And he looks up and he sees it. And we're just looking at it for a while. But shortly after I say that to Merlin, the ship shoots over the Santa Monica Mountains. And it's gone in 2 seconds, absolutely silently. I might have heard a noise on the other side of the mountains, but it's hard to say. The air conditioners were running on the roof a little bit, but there was no noise whatsoever. And then it was gone. And that was it. It was over. Now, the feeling of the ship when it was overhead, when I first saw it, was very similar to the opening of the first Star Wars movie, where there's this little spaceship going along, and then all of a sudden this huge triangular cruiser comes overhead. Except there was no noise. It was absolutely silent. And the other thing is, as it was shooting away, I saw the back of it, but I can't really remember what the back of it looked like. I kind of thought for a moment someone was playing a joke on us, like they were shooting a hologram up at the sky, and we were just seeing a hologram, because I work in a special effects facility. But as it flew away, it was a real ship. And I felt like I was staring into the future somehow, like I was seeing an event in the future, or I was seeing technology from the future, and something like that. Now, as soon as it was gone, Merlin and I, for 10 minutes, said, wow, do you see how fast that went? What do you think that was? Wow, that's amazing. That's it. And I was really, really glad that he was there, because someone else saw this same ship when I did. So I know it's real. And so even if none of you believe me, which is fine, I know it was real. And that's the amazing thing. That's the amazing thing, is that there was some other technology. And I don't know what it was, but it could have been a military experiment, but I doubt it for a couple of reasons. It was big, and it was absolutely quiet. There is not a flying machine manufactured on Earth that is absolutely, totally silent like that and can move that fast. In 2 seconds, it shot from directly overhead to over the horizon 20 miles away. And if you do the calculation, 2 seconds, 20 miles, that's escape velocity. That's the speed that you need to go to escape the pull of gravitation of planet Earth. Do the calculations. I worked it out on an envelope. Now, a few things are interesting about this, because the whole time the videotape was running. And I remembered I had the videotape after it was all over. And when I watched the videotape, and I may post it here sometime, when I watched the videotape, the curious thing is, all my memories of sitting there and watching the ship and saying to myself over and over again, Bill, you have to remember this. Bill, you have to remember this, occur in a few frames, a few fields. There's no time on the tape from all the memories I have of watching this ship. My dialogue goes straight from, well, third shift isn't so, and I stop mid-sentence, and then it goes right into, wow, did you see that? Did you see how fast that went? That's one curious thing about it. The other curious thing is, this was the lunar eclipse. I thought, great. Not only did me and Merlin see this ship, but in Los Angeles, and we were in Santa Monica, in the edge of Los Angeles. In the Los Angeles area, there have to be 1,000 people that watch the lunar eclipse. There's tens of millions of people in the Los Angeles area. There had to be 1,000 people that were looking right at the moon, right at the time that ship was directly overhead. And no one saw it. No one reported it. I went online and I started looking the next couple of days for reports of a black triangle, and nothing. There was one report at about 3:30 in the morning where someone in Calgary, Canada saw the exact same type of black triangle ship. But other than that, no one saw it. And that's an amazing thing. And that's my story. That is my UFO story. And now on YouTube, you can see lots of these triangular pattern of lights. And a lot of people think they're ships flying in formation, but to me, they look exactly like the black triangle that I saw. And it makes sense because the dynamic range of video is about 30 to 1. The dynamic range of film is 300 to 1, and the dynamic range that the eye can see is 3,000 to 1. And to my naked eye, and I have a pretty good eye, this was almost indistinguishable from the sky. So there's no way a video camera, or probably even a film camera, could pick out the edge of this object. Now, what it was, I do not know. But I doubt it was from this earth. It may have been from the future. Possibly it was some military experiment, but I find that highly unlikely. And the two peculiar things that stand out in my mind is no one else in Los Angeles saw it, even though there had to have been 1,000 people looking directly at the lunar eclipse, and it happened during the lunar eclipse. And the other thing was there was a time distortion effect, where I have lots of memories of looking at the ship and talking about it that do not fit in the space on the videotape that I have an audio recording of. After that, I started researching UFOs because it really blew me away. The next day I went to work, and it was so everything was normal. We told a few people we saw a UFO, and they're like, oh, well, we got output, we got shots we got to do, let's get to work. And everything was depressingly ordinary after we had just seen the most mind-boggling event. One of the peak events of my life, and a life-changing experience. And I'm not sure why. But I know that these black triangles are real. I know that there's some other alien presence on Earth. And I know it was a ship. It was a big, heavy ship of some kind. Other than that, I have no idea what it was, where it came from, or why it was here. I have no idea why we saw it and no one else did. But I'm looking forward to seeing another one. I feel it's important that people know these things are real. Merlin saw it, I saw it, we both saw the same thing, and it was amazing.
Greetings everyone, Ryan Sprague here, host of Somewhere in the Skies. For over 7 years and more than 400 episodes, the Somewhere in the Skies podcast has always been free to listen to, but it's not free to create. So we offer several ways to help support our efforts and get rewards in return. If you listen to the podcast on Apple, you can click the subscribe button at the top of your Somewhere in the Skies feed to become a premium Apple subscriber. Or you can join our Patreon campaign with several tiers available. Both of these options give you the same benefits and rewards: ad-free episodes, early access to the main show, and bonus episodes and content. Help keep the lights on at the Somewhere in the Skies HQ, and help us continue to grow by becoming a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/somewhereskies, or by clicking the subscribe button at the top of your Apple feed. Thank you for your continued support, and keep looking up.
I want to share with you my UFO story. I didn't believe in aliens at the time. I didn't believe in God. I didn't really believe in anything at that moment. I believed in going out clubbing with my friends and smoking cigarettes, you know, looking cool. That's basically what I believed in. But yeah, I was around the corner. Where I grew up, it's like the suburbs of England, outside London. It's a place called Essex. Is actually where I grew up, in this little town. Everything is like little 3-bedroom semi-detached houses, you know, 2 levels with a roof like that. So lots of these all in an estate. So that's setting the scene of where I lived. So very, very normal suburbia. And I was outside one night with my friend, and we was having a cigarette at 2 o'clock in the morning, looking up at the stars and just talking between ourselves. And out of nowhere, out of the black sky full of stars, a little point of light that looked like a star, it literally came like this. As you looked, like it, just like a 3D movie, it came straight towards us, and then it stopped above a friend's house. So we were opposite the house we were looking at over there, right above the roof. So it was very close. It wasn't one of these blurry UFOs far away, not quite sure what it is kind of things. This was, oh my God, it's right above us, I can nearly touch it kind of UFO sighting. And so this silver disc, it looked like a egg shape, you know, like a fried egg. It was a typical flying saucer, silver, with some white lights on the bottom of it. I remember it as like a horseshoe shape of white lights. No windows, no sound, no nothing. Absolutely silently, it came from outer space. Like, it took seconds, even at like a blur, and just stopped above my friend's house for about 10 seconds, as if dropping off someone. It literally was a metre above the top of the roof of the house, so just above us. Literally, if I'd have had a tennis ball, I could have thrown the tennis ball and bounced it off the UFO. That's how close it was. So right above my friend's house, it stopped for about 10 seconds. Me and my friend Hayley are just like... iPhones didn't exist when I was 17, so there was no like, oh, let's grab a camera. And even if we'd had an iPhone, we were so much in shock, like literally... You know, one of those moments when your entire life changes, as if you'd just seen Santa Claus, like the real Santa Claus standing in front of you, and like suddenly, you know, your life changes. It was like that. It was a moment, and like frozen. We were kind of jaw dropped and frozen, staring, and then 10 seconds later, just the same way it appeared, it disappeared. But the way it disappeared, it went out into space, and then the point of light went poof, and just disappeared, like it was a star then gone. And like seconds, not like a second, so fast it moved, it was a blur and gone. Now, it didn't make any sound. There was no, as it arrived, there wasn't like a whoosh kind of feeling of air movement or anything. It was everything was still, barely a sound, barely the tree even rustled, nothing. And if we hadn't been outside, I'm sure no one would have seen anything. It was just pure chance. I don't know why we saw it that night. Perhaps it was preordained so that I would awaken as a star seed and activate myself. Who knows? But it changed my life. That moment changed my life from a scientific atheist who believed anything woohoo was crazy, right, to delving into the rabbit hole. My brain was changed forever, because I thought everyone that believed in UFOs or had seen a UFO was la la lulu, if you know what I mean. I thought it was just crazy American people who had watched too much science fiction movies and maybe been smoking a bit too much wacky backy, and that's how I saw the whole UFO phenomenon. And since I saw one myself, well, it made me question everything. I thought, wow, if I was wrong about that, what else was I wrong about? And then I started to unravel myself and my reality, and that was like kind of the beginning of that process, really, to where I am today. So I just wanted to share that with you, that amazing moment in time that changed my life forever. So UFOs, they definitely are real. They really do exist. But who is driving them? I can't say. I really can't say. And do people believe you when you tell them you've seen it? No. Not usually. Not usually. Hardly anyone I told believed me after I'd seen it. No one in my family believed me. Even, like, I'd seen it, it was so obvious, and I couldn't believe, and that also changed the way I saw things. I thought, wow, how many times has someone told me something that I just totally discounted and didn't believe them when they could have been telling the truth? So yeah, that's my little UFO story. It was an amazing moment. One love. And to all my alien brothers and sisters, one love to you too. You're not really aliens, you're just sisters and brothers from another mother.
Well, my name is Rick, and what I'm about to tell you is something that happened to me and 3 other people in October of 1973. I live in the Cincinnati, Ohio area, and on the local news, just about every night, there were reports of UFOs in my local city. I was not into the whole UFO thing. I thought it was just a bunch of bullshit. I was really an absolute non-believer. But in the evening in October of 1973, my buddy and I were going on a double date. My girlfriend was going to fix him up with one of her friends. We started in New Richmond, Ohio. New Richmond is about 10 miles east of Cincinnati. It is a small little town that is right on the Ohio River. After we picked the girls up, all 4 of us was in his car, and we were driving on a road called Front Street in New Richmond. At that point, we saw all these people looking out over the river, and they were like pointing at something, and just quite a few people were looking at the river. We got to the end of this little road where the wall was, and there was a police cruiser there. We asked him, was there an accident on the river? And he said, no, people are seeing strange lights out over the river. It's like, oh, wow, that's interesting. But we wanted to get on with our date, so we headed east on U.S. 52. We were heading to a place called Meldal Dam, which was another 20 miles up from the town in New Richmond. As we're driving in that direction, there's a little area known as Point Pleasant, Ohio, which is the birthplace of President Ulysses S. Grant. And there's a little lookout over the river. And as we're getting into this area, we start seeing lights out over the river. We pulled over, looking out over this area that we could see the river well. We were parked there looking and seeing strange lights over the river. But we did that for a couple minutes and decided to get on with our evening. So we get back out on the highway. We're heading east. There was a power plant under construction. It was called the Zimmer Nuclear Power Plant. And it was in the news constantly because people were complaining, construction workers, that there were flaws in this nuclear power plant cooling tower. But as we're heading up on US 52 there, we were going past the power plant, and there was one of those big kind of nuclear cooling towers that we could see from the road, and there were these balls of light that were moving around the top of the tower, kind of like they were looking for something. They were definitely intelligently controlled. There was probably 5 or 6 of these balls, and they were various colors. They had strange movements. They really, it looked like they were probably scanning this cooling tower. They had a strange flight pattern, but they were mainly over the top edge of this cooling tower. So we were pulled over to the side of the road, and we sat there for probably 5 minutes or less watching it, and it was scary because they were so strange. But they were just balls of different colored light. We decided to get on up the highway. We get back out and we're heading east, on Highway 52 there. We finally get to our destination, which was Meldal Dam, and it was a great place when I was young to go to kind of make out with girls. It was very quiet there. There was nobody usually there in the evenings, and it was a working dam on the river, but we pulled in there and get to the very end of the parking lot. There is a guardrail at the very end, and this parking lot's kind of a long, narrow parking lot. But at the very end, there was a guardrail. We probably stopped 10 feet from the guardrail, maybe somewhere around 10 feet or 15 feet. And directly on the other side of the guardrail was a tree. And that was not a large tree, but a tree that might have been, 30 feet high. We park there and we turn off the lights of the car and we start seeing lights moving around out over the river. It was really very, very strange lights, and they were moving in a way that you could kind of tell it wasn't a normal airplane or a helicopter. They just had a very unusual movement to them. And as we're doing that, the girl that was in the back seat on the left side of the car, she started freaking out, saying, oh my God, look what's coming. And off to our left, there was a field. There was a flying saucer floating across this field, probably about 40 feet off the top of the surface. It came right across the field and stopped in front of us. We were freaking out, totally dumbstruck what was going on. And the feeling we had was, because we talked about this when we were driving back, as we were looking at it, we felt it was looking at us. And it stopped in front of us for a reason, because I guess we were all alone and there was no one else around. It was just checking us out, I guess. As we're sitting there looking at it, the girls started saying, we want to leave. We want to get out of here. So we thought we need to call the police and let them know what we're seeing. I don't think the police done a darn thing about what we were seeing, but that's the only thing we could think of that we could do. And we knew that up about a mile further east from where we were, there was a little ice cream place, and they used to have a telephone booth out in front. We went up to the telephone booth to make a phone call to the police, but when we got up there, the phone booth no longer existed. And the girls were like, well, we just want to go home. The evening was just getting started. We probably picked the girls up somewhere around 8 o'clock that evening. Probably a total of 45 minutes at this point have passed by, and the girls wanted the evening to end. They wanted to go home. So my buddy took us all back to New Richmond, and my girlfriend and we got into my car and drove to her house. She lived in the Moscow, Ohio area, where it was very close to the Zimmer power plant. But we had to drive back up the same direction. But on the trip up, we didn't see any lights. It was, the sky seemed normal. We got to her house, and her family kind of lived a little bit up on a hill, and we pulled in her driveway, and we thought we'd just hang out there. But as we were sitting in the car, all of a sudden we started seeing lights out over the river. We could see that area. We saw the strange light movement. And my girlfriend said, I want to go in the house. I don't want to be out here any longer. I'm getting too freaked out. The evening really kind of ended before it even got started. I left her home. I was going back to my father's house. These are all country roads out in this area. And my father, my stepmother, and their 2 daughters all lived in this house, and I was staying with them for a short time. So I'm driving back, and as I get back into the New Richmond area, this time I'm on the highway. there was a billboard coming up on my right-hand side that was somewhat elevated. The road actually set higher than the sides of the road were kind of down in a gully. The billboard was mounted on an elevated platform. It was a billboard that said at the next turn there was a Frisch's Big Boy restaurant off to the left. But as I'm passing this billboard, I look. Right below the billboard was a glowing ball of light, and it was floating off the ground. It was sitting very low, but it was floating, and it was probably 3.5 feet, 4 feet in diameter. And the moment I saw that, I really freaked out. Now I'm all alone. I felt like this thing was following me, or I kind of felt like a marked man that, oh my God, I shouldn't have seen what we've seen. Now it's coming after me. I was 20 years old at the time of this. Usually for guys, when you're 20, you're kind of fearless. This particular night, after seeing the flying saucer right in front of us, I was beyond freaked out. I was scared to death. And then when I saw the ball of light by the billboard, I thought, I'm going to be going down a country road and this thing's going to be waiting for me. It scared the hell out of me trying to drive back to my dad's house. Anyway, I made it, and when I got home, I went in and I woke everybody up. I told them about my experience and that there was 3 other people. I think my dad believed me, but I think my stepmother was skeptical, and so were her girls. But I told them, I said, look, I'm not telling you this to get you to believe what I saw. I'm telling you this because this is just what we experienced. So that was pretty much it. But years later, we were having a get-together at my house. My stepmother and my 2 stepsisters were there. This story came up about me seeing a flying saucer with 3 of my friends. When we were talking about it, they told me that I woke them all up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I just said, I think that's impossible because the latest it could have been was probably 10 or 10:30, probably at the very latest. All 3 of them swore that it was 3 o'clock in the morning when I woke them up. That just really made me worry what happened on that drive home that night and why, instead of it being 10 or 10:30, why I woke them up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't have any memories of anything else happening other than what I just said. I don't have any abduction memories, have any memories of aliens. I just have a memory of I was with 3 other people and we had a flying saucer come down right in front of us, and then a little bit later, I had that ball of light that was off to my right. When I was driving back, I felt like it was following me. So anyway, that's pretty much my story. It's been one of those things that happened 52 years ago, and I still think about it almost every day. It just blew my mind. We were not on any drugs. We weren't drinking. My girlfriend that I had at the time was not into any of that kind of stuff. So there were no drugs or alcohol involved in this. This was just some young kids going up to a parking lot to make out. That's all it was. And the evening totally got ruined by this experience. But now that some time has passed, I do feel very fortunate. I feel like it kind of opened up my thinking. I never believed in anything like this. There's more going on than we actually realize. It just was, it was an unbelievable, scary time. Looking back, I wonder what would have happened if we could have gotten out of the car. I know there's been other cases where people have done that and had some crazy experiences, which in particular, I'm talking about the Travis Walton fire in the sky. Anyway, that's my story, and I just wanted to share it. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So today I'm going to be talking about a story of a UFO story of mine. It's honestly it's a funny story, really, and I think about it sometimes, and I think that I must have been crazy, or that I can't figure out what it is. But first, I want to mention something about Islam and aliens or creatures when it comes to Islam, right? So the only ayah I will talk about, which there might be more, but this is the one I know of, which is Surah 42, ayah 29, and it says, "Among his manifest signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth, and that he has dispersed in both of them living creatures, and he has full power to gather them together when he wills." And the tafsir, or the explanation, goes, as far as I know, and again, if you have proof, evidence, or articles, or something that might be interesting regarding Islam and extraterrestrial, life. But as far as the research I've done, it just ends up with Allahu Alam, Allah knows best, and there's no clear argument from the Quran or Hadith that there aren't life, extraterrestrial life. So I'm going to leave it at that and just continue with my UFO story. So it happened in 2012. I was 16 and I was living in the north of the country, meaning at the time it was summer, so it was broad daylight at the middle of the night. I think this was around like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. I was living in a small apartment actually because I was in the process of moving to the south of the country. And yeah, I was sitting outside on I climbed out the window basically and sat outside on a small place, I don't know, in like the second story of the house. And I was sitting there just looking out, and we live very close, or I lived close to the airport, but of course it was 2 a.m. It was very quiet, very nice. I love that about the northern of Norway in the summer, because it's broad daylight but everyone's asleep, no cars, no planes taking off anything, and it's just quiet. I was looking out and these two objects popped up from the city center. There was some construction work going there, so I thought maybe there was something that flew off or like whatever. I didn't know, but it kept moving. Two little bean-shaped things, and at first, because of the distance, I thought, okay, maybe this is some sort of a helicopter, because it had that longish shape. But it was just a smooth surface, no reflection of the daylight, and it was moving like very weird, like hovering, and there was no sound. Again, we lived close to the airport and there's a military base there, so we would hear, like literally I would look at the tower at the airport, so I would hear everything happening at the airport, but there was no sound, and also it was coming from a different, like opposite direction than the airport. But it was just like moving and it was so strange. I think I have to show like a drawing or something just to explain. It was like basically two bean-shaped things. And they were flying up from the city center, right? And kind of coming a bit towards me, still like far away. And again, imagine a distance that it looked like the size of a helicopter, so quite big, but still further away because it looks like a bean on the horizon. But still close enough, right? And just moved like this, and they're like kind of interacting with each other. I don't know. And it happened very quickly, the first like close part, but then it kind of they flew towards us, or towards me, to where I was sitting, and then just took a turn and just continued towards, the beach or whatever. Just continued, and I was just staring at it, flying or hovering, no sounds whatsoever. And I remember I was just sitting there, I think for maybe 20 or 30 minutes, until it was just such a small, dot on the cloud in the sky that I couldn't see anymore. So it wasn't just, it's here, suddenly it's gone. No, it was here, but then it just flew off and just disappeared in the horizon. We sat for, maybe 20 minutes, dead quiet, just looking at it and be like, what is this? And like I said, we were sitting there until it just disappeared. It didn't just like snap, gone. It was, super creepy, super weird. And the thing about this is that, I think about it I think about it, and I think, and you guys might think that my mind was playing me a trick. But the catch here that makes it so much more real is that I had a friend with me sitting next to me because I had a sleepover, and she saw the same. After we just got dead quiet when we saw it, we were just staring at it, like looking at it moving, and sitting for 20 minutes just staring until it was gone. And the first thing I said, we had been quiet all the time, was, "Did you see that?" It was such a bizarre feeling. But I asked her, like, "Did you see that?" And she was like, "Yeah, I saw something. I saw that." And we haven't really talked about it actually after, but it is so bizarre. I don't know what it is today. Again, smooth surface, no reflection of the daylight, no reflection at all, nothing poking out, just super smooth, matte, quiet, and then off they went. I think it's very interesting, it's very exciting in a sense. I don't know, like, we have no reason to believe there's nothing at all. There's no argument, as far as I know, again, in Islam that says that there aren't. But we're the only ones, basically. Al-Ghaib is an Arabic expression used to convey that something is concealed, unseen, in some way. It is an important concept in Islam, encompassing not only the realm of the divine, including angels, paradise, and hell, but also future events which only God knows. In the Quran, it has 6 forms and 3 meanings, but it can also be used in a general sense to refer to something that is known to some but concealed from others.
Somewhere in the Skies is part of the Somewhere podcast universe. Please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. To learn more about all of our shows, visit thespu.com.